Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Resilience Brief, the show where we the real-world power of adversarial exposure validation and what it takes to build lasting cyber resilience. I'm your host, Tova Dvorin, and in just 15 minutes, we'll get straight into the strategies, insights, and stories that help you stay ahead of today's evolving threats. Today, we're going to dive into all things DORA, the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act, and what it means for your business, whether or not you're operating inside the European Union. On us today, we've got Adrian Culley and David Murray from SafeBreach, and take it away.
Hi, I'm Adrian.
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Tova. So the Digital Operational Resilience Act, it's an EU regulation, 2554 of 2022, came into force for the European Union on the 17th of January this year. And as David's fully aware, it applies to finance, insurance and banking, or all financial entities that operate in the EU, with very few exceptions, and ICT, which is acronym for effectively telecommunications firms who operate in the EU as well. It's fair to say DORA is redefining the regulatory landscape. Part of the heart of that, which again we'll unpick as we're chatting, is unusually for regulation, it actually contains some really good, strong ideas, principles and philosophies for cybersecurity. David and I have spent a lot of time recently with banking, finance and insurance customers chatting this through, what it means for them. Let's get to the heart of this. There's a whole swathe of new legislation around the world driven by the ideas that are in DORA. And from DORA itself, the key word is resilience. And let's actually just ponder on resilience for a moment. Resilience, the Oxford English Dictionary definition, is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, and toughness. Now, that's just as true in a cyber aspect as it is in any other aspect in life. So it's two meanings. It's strength against adversity, aka toughness, and the ability to recover quickly.
And those are two different things. People forget that.
Yes, they're a single word, but two different things. And certainly when we come into cybersecurity, offensive cybersecurity, they're quite wide-ranging. Around the world, we're seeing, aren't we, David, job titles emerging?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look on LinkedIn nowadays, you'll see leaderships with resilience in their job title. So we're seeing not just traditional CISOs, we're now seeing chief resilience officers as well.
So a way of thinking about this is, if cybersecurity is always evolving, if you think of it as a trek up a mountain, there is no peak really, because it's always false horizons. But for the next 10 years, given this legislation that's coming in around the world, the current apex of cybersecurity is resilience, which brings together both offensive security and defensive security. And that's the step change. In the past, it was perceived as the best you could do to put in place defensive controls. The problem with that is, I know David likes to talk about the cyber canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So when we think about it, when we think about where SafeBreach fits into that, we are that digital canary in the coal mine.
And that springs from, if you look at attacks around the last 50 years, if you look at skilled, government-trained attackers, highly skilled criminal attackers, there are some common denominators. And one of those common denominators is the first thing that highly skilled attackers do is disable defenses.
Right. So how about we go back a little bit to the canary in the coal mine analogy and just explain it for a brief second for those of us who might not be already familiar with it.
Okay, so the analogy of the cyber canary in the coal mine is, in the distant past, coal miners physically, one of the early defences against gas build-up in a mine, which was dangerous for two reasons. First and foremost, it could be an explosion. But secondly, when it rose to a certain level, bear in mind, coal miners were crouched down very low.
Right.
They'd stop breathing oxygen and start breathing gas, often methane, and this would render them unconscious. So what was introduced was literally a canary in a coal mine that they dangled down. Methane is heavier than air, so it goes to the bottom of the mine and it would build up from the bottom. And what would happen is the canary would fall asleep before the miner did. The miner would know there was a gas build-up and leave the mine, very often in the dark with no naked flame for obvious reasons. And that's been used as an analogy for many years for anti-tamper mechanisms and early detection mechanisms. Well, an open question to everybody in the industry is, what anti-tamper mechanisms do you have for your defences? What is your equivalent of the digital canary in the coal mine to give you early warning that a credible attacker has just defeated your defenses?
And now that it's being regulated, it means that we can't rely on shelfware for that. Not that we should have anyway.
So absolutely, there's many levels to DORA, but a key part of resilience and the ability to recover quickly is early detection that our defenses are under attack. And the way forward in doing that is ongoing validation of our defenses. DORA requires, across a number of sections, Article 6, Article 9, Article 10, Article 13, Article 16, continuous testing. It's a very broad philosophy, and part of the reason, there are many, but part of the reason for that continuous testing is detecting as early as possible that your defenses have been disabled.
So, Adrian, would you say it's a continuous assurance of resilience versus one-off snapshots? Hence the reason why traditional penetration testing doesn't work.
Great question, David, and absolutely. Legacy penetration testing is dead, and the reason is one-off tick box compliance. Guess what? Attackers don't do one-off tick box attacks. And the whole ethos behind DORA is to match the adversary. And we do that with two things that are really important in the Act. Continuous testing, and something that, for many people, frightens the life out of them. It's Article 26 of DORA, threat-led penetration testing on critical live production systems. Not in the lab, not on test systems, threat-led on critical live production systems. That is not legacy penetration testing. Running the same script as a script kiddie that you did 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, doesn't cut it anymore. We need to be doing this continuously because the attacks are continuous. And it boils down to an ongoing sea shift in the industry, moving from incident response to incident anticipation. And how do we do that?
So here's a question. Why now?
Why now in terms of DORA? It's taken the whole of the world a long time to get to this level of maturity. And it's because these issues are constantly maturing, but every now and then we get a rapid series of breakthroughs. Some wise legislators 3, 4, 5 years ago realised there was two issues in the financial industry. One was tick box compliance. The other was purchasing elegant solutions to tell a regulator that there was a license owned and that the entity had this solution, but then only ever deploying them in a lab. And part of the reasoning of DORA to require continuous is to avoid once every 3 years. That's not good enough. And secondly, explicit requirement for critical live production systems. Lab-based testing isn't good enough. The only way you're going to preempt attacks is by hacking yourself before the threat actor does. Now, interestingly, the European Central Bank updated in February their TIBER framework, the threat intelligence-based enhanced red teaming, TIBER. That now fully embraces breach and attack simulation and DORA. And there's a shift driven by this legislation and regulation to continual attack simulation, continual emulation, and continual testing. And there's a life cycle here that mirrors the incident response life cycle. And the life cycle for simulation and emulation and adversary emulation is validate your controls, find the gaps, remediate the gaps, and then revalidate. At the same time, we drive picking zero patients, key assets in the organization, whether it's a machine, whether it's a role, whether it's a user. We designate that user as being the zero patient in the attack simulation, and we calculate two things: the blast radius of that attack, if that asset is compromised, how far can an attacker get, and the blast fallout of that attack, how much damage can they do. And again, we find the holes and we remediate. So we've now got this ongoing cycle to be compliant with DORA of tool validation and asset attack propagation. And for both, we validate, find the gaps, remediate, then we propagate, find the gaps and remediate. When we're doing this over time on a scheduled basis, the other reason DORA requires continuous, we're able to see how our security posture shifts. Now, for 40 years, the cybersecurity industry, has talked about cybersecurity posture as if it was a statue, a frozen fixed thing. The reality is it's complex, dynamic, and fluid. And again, why continuous? Well, because your cybersecurity posture is constantly shifting. And the only way to be anywhere near match fit is to be constantly monitoring that. Like, it's no good just having a cyber canary in the coal mine. You've got to keep an eye on it. If it's gone unconscious, you'll only know that if you're watching it. There's a lot more to DORA, which we'll be pulling out over the coming months and years in a series of webinars and podcasts. It's very interesting as well at the moment. It's regulation that's moved into legislation. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment with attacks, particularly Scattered Spider, APT 28, 29, Fin 6, Fin 7. As we get into 2026, we're going to start to see enforcement action around DORA. And when we start to see enforcement action, those who aren't quite as up to speed as they should be will get a wake-up call.
So you're saying that those not based in the EU should be paying attention now?
Well, that's a very valid point. I mentioned at the start of our chat, DORA's redefining the regulatory landscape globally. The reason for this is, just like GDPR data protection legislation, even if you're non-EU based, if you're dealing with a European financial entity or ICT entity that works with financial entities, you have to be DORA compliant. And if you're not, you can be fined. And the fines are massive, up to 10% of your turnover.
Wow.
We've not seen any of those applied yet because it's only a few months since the Act went live, but enforcement action will come. Shareholders, internal auditors and external auditors are very, very concerned about DORA compliance. Now, there's a whole second raft of reasons which are just as valid, which is it's a very, very good idea to comply with DORA because it contains very sound cybersecurity principles. Why would you not validate your cybersecurity controls? Why would you not ensure that you've got anti-tamper mechanisms and a cyber canary in the coal mine, a digital canary? There is no downside to this. And we're having financial institutions knock our door down. We're very lucky we're very strong in that area and have been for a long time. And why is that? Well, back to critical live production systems. The clue's in our name.
SafeBreach.
SafeBreach, exactly. Thank you, Tova. We do this safely. For an analogy, what we do is people say you don't allow children to play with matches, but we do. However, we make sure that those matches are damp, moist, and can't ignite. And all of our attacks are neutered. For that reason, unlike conventional legacy penetration testing, we are very strong across finance, insurance, banking, the financial entities, actually for 11 years now, running attack simulations on critical live production systems. This can be done, and we help people do it 24/7, 365.
Yeah, and that's a big bank of expertise to draw on. So, Adrian, what do you see us discussing in upcoming episodes about DORA, about cyber resilience? What else can we offer our guests?
So we'll be getting into the protection and prevention elements of DORA, digging deeper into both continuous and in production. We'll be looking at and mentioning some of the emerging legislation around the world that's already reflecting DORA. In the UK, there is a cybersecurity and resilience bill tracking through Parliament as we speak. As a side note to that, in the UK system, new legislation is generally introduced in the King's Speech in October. This was introduced in October, but at the same time, very quietly, all data centres in the UK were designated as being critical national infrastructure. And few people have picked up on this yet. That's going to be encompassed by the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill as it becomes an act. Now, there's a key shift there. There's over 500 data centres in the UK. Switzerland, data centres are the second biggest source of income to the whole country. And this shift back to good ideas stemming from DORA, in the past, data centre owners took a view that what was on the racks, the actual data, was the problem of the owner of the asset. The emerging legislation says not good enough, data centre owners. You have to take, as part of critical national infrastructure, safety precautions, validation, remediation, making sure that you're detecting attacks in your data center. You can't abrogate that responsibility. So we'll be talking about that in future shows as well. We'll also be talking with customers who've been doing this for some time, with partner companies who are very strong around this area, with some very exciting and very interesting chats coming, and we'll be aiming as often as we can to be giving you practical takeaways, obviously based around attack simulation and adversary emulation, but practical actionable intelligence as to how you can increase your resilience. Resilience is the tip of the spear, and we're in the game. SafeBreach's real product is knowledge transfer, skills, knowledge, know-how, and we want to make you're all good, we want to make you better, and that's our daily challenge.
Really exciting. Wow, looking forward. Well, we pledged to keep this brief, so let's wrap this up. Looking forward to next episodes. That's all for this episode of the Cyber Resilience Brief. Huge thanks to our guests, Adrian Culley and David Murray, for sharing their insights. And thank you for listening. If you found today's discussion helpful, please make sure to click the follow or subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about how SafeBreach can help you validate and strengthen your cyber resilience, visit us at www.safebreach.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay resilient. The Cyber Resilience Brief is a SafeBreach podcast. It's produced by Tova Dvorin and executive produced by Adrian Culley. Sound design provided by Adobe Podcasts. Distribution provided by Podbean, and extra support and love from the SafeBreach team. For more information on how adversarial exposure validation through SafeBreach can protect you and your business, no matter where you reside or what industry you're in, please visit us at www.safebreach.com.